The things that happen to us when we're kids can have a profound effect on us. And something traumatic or truly puzzling, like this next story, can haunt you for years afterwards, even when you're an adult.
I looked you guys up after I talked to you and listened to some of your other podcasts.
Cool.
I'm a machinist at a Mitsubishi plant, so I work 10 hours a day and I just listen to podcasts.
Oh, really? Well, let's do it.
Okay.
Set the stage for me, the time and place, and how old you were when this story begins.
Okay, it was 1988. I was 10 years old. My family and I lived in a small town called Trafalgar, Indiana. When you think of out in the middle of the country, that's what it was. We finally got a Dairy Queen, I think, when I was in high school, and a gas station. That was big. All the kids knew each other. We all liked each other. Some kids are nerds and some kids are cool. But in the summer, on the street, everyone's friends. Everyone hangs together. It's your typical 80s childhood, you know, before computers. Everyone's riding their BMXs around town, playing Star Wars, G.I. Joes. Pretty much a Steven Spielberg movie. On our street that I lived in, there was about 5 houses, and in between was a giant wooded area. All these neighbors we knew. The Mitchells on one side, they rode our bus. They were a little older than me and my sister. Down the other street, we had Mr. Robinson. I mean, he's a really good guy. And then one of the other houses was a teacher of mine. They didn't have any kids. And then there was another house. We called it the mystery house around town. No one knew who lived there. You could hardly see it. You could see it if you went back in the woods, but you could only see like the top story, the roof, the window. We kind of became fascinated with it, the kids around town. You know, we'd spy on the mystery house, try to catch any sign of people coming in or out, and we never did, really. You could tell they wanted their privacy. No one knew who even lived there, really. The look of the house was it was different than all the other houses. You know, this is the 80s in Indiana. Most are just 1-story brick houses. This was like 3 stories, very Gothic. It just stood out. It was out of place. And it wasn't just me. The other kids, we talked about this house, too. Talked about vampires, you know, stuff like that. I think my buddy Mike Earlywine said that he saw a vampire. You know, we made up stories. It was a house that was connected to the woods that we were all connected to, but no one knew a thing about it. We just referred to it as the mystery house. All of us did. I had 2 sisters. I was by myself a lot. You know, I was a middle child. My oldest sister, I'm good friends with her, but, you know, she had her friends. And in the summertime, I just liked going out in the woods. I just liked being out there by myself. I was kind of a loner. I'd take a bag of G.I. Joes out in the woods. I wouldn't take my Star Wars because they were too precious, you know. But G.I. Joe, that was fine to put in the creek or bury, you know, or, you know, play in the woods with. And one day I went back there, this little spot by the creek where you could kind of see the mystery house. I'm out there and I'm playing with my G.I. Joes, and all of a sudden, just an overwhelming feeling of paralyzing fear, basically. I don't know how to explain it besides I knew someone was, or something was watching me out there. I don't know if it was a human or an animal or what, but I just could tell I was not alone. I don't know if I heard a branch crack or a leaf or whatever, but I just remember stiffening up and being scared shitless, basically. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to know what it was. And I remember putting my G.I. Joes back in the bag. I still remember the bag. It was blue with yellow straps and a yellow zipper. Calmly stood up and walked back to my house without turning around. Freaked me out, and I didn't go back in the woods for a few days. I didn't tell anybody either, because I was a kid who watched horror movies. I loved stuff like that. Even at that age, trying to read Stephen King books, but I don't think I was getting very far in them. A few days went by, and I decided to go back out there. I don't know if it was morbid curiosity or what, but I went back to the exact same spot. This time I didn't take anything with me, probably because in case I needed to get out, I could just get out and go. And sitting there, I was sticking sticks in the creek mud, And then all of a sudden, I don't know if I heard something or not, but I just knew. I don't know how to explain it other than someone's there. And I started walking away, and all of a sudden, the voice came. It scared me, but since it was a gentle voice, I turned around. And there was a girl standing there, and she simply said, "You don't have to go home." And this is how I met Laura. Laura was kind of strange looking at him. She had like a mop top hair, kind of messy. Her clothes were kind of weird. She explained to me that she lived in the mystery house. She was an only child, and that she was home taught. That's how we struck up our friendship. She was wearing clothing that you shouldn't be wearing in the summer. She had a long sleeve flannel, buttoned real high. It looked very uncomfortable to me. It was like too tight in some spots and too baggy in other spots. And her hair was like a mop top, kind of slobby, you know, like she hadn't combed it. For like a week or two, I kept going out there and hanging out with Laura. I just was having fun out there, you know. I met a new friend in the woods, which is kind of strange. She explained to me that her room in her house was the whole top floor, like a giant attic to herself. You could see one window from the area in the woods, and that was her window. The way she made it sound was a giant, basically, toy room. She just told me she was homeschooled and that her parents let her basically run the top floor of the house, basically like a giant toy room. Never gave me their names, never invited me up, definitely didn't invite me up to the house. I don't know if I invited her to my house, to be honest with you. I think we kind of just agreed to have our meeting spot out there. Eventually, she took me around to a spot on the other side of her house, which I had not been to previously. She showed me a swing hanging from the trees. It was a wood swing with rope, and it was attached to two different trees, but the branches like came together. She swung on it. I remember pushing her. She asked me about my life a lot. I just pushed her while she asked me questions about my life. And whenever I'd ask her about hers, very vague, not much answers. She never said much about her parents. I don't know why. I got the feeling something was kind of off there. I asked her why she was homeschooled. I didn't quite understand what that meant at the time. I wanted to ask her if her parents were strange, but I never did. She didn't want to talk about herself. I'd be pushing her on the swing, and I'd ask her a question, and then she would just come back with a question of her own. Just change the subject. No one ever asked me about myself, really, so I was probably just out there blabbing away about my life. I think maybe the fact that this older girl was talking to me, I probably had like a little schoolboy crush going on, even though I didn't find her pretty really, but she was paying attention to me, you know? One day, she said, very matter-of-factly, "Come here, I want to show you something." She took me to this little area, and there was this tree. And her name was carved on the tree. And then she said, "I want to show you something else." One of the limbs had fallen off, and there was like a hole. And she put her hand in and pulled out a pack of cigarettes. Marlboro Reds. Soft pack, like they used to sell. And I don't think they even sell soft packs anymore. I'll never forget it because it was all crumpled up. And she taught me how to smoke cigarettes out there. I remember feeling, oh man, this is not good. I'm out here breaking the rules, you know? She pulled one out and lit it, smoked it like half down, and then handed it to me. And I took, at the time, my best attempt at inhaling a cigarette. I think I did like 2 of them, and she smoked a lot. I think I watched her smoke like 10 cigarettes out in the woods. She had a smoking habit. I eventually told my parents that I was hanging out with someone out there, and they thought it was cool. You know, they didn't really question it. My older sister kind of teased me and saying I had a girlfriend out there, and Looking back on it, I probably did have a little adolescent crush that I developed on this 11-year-old, and I'm 10, and she's teaching me to do bad things and showing me around. And then one day, I went out there, and she was gone. I went back out there a few times, and she never came back. I just thought maybe she didn't want to come back out, or I didn't know. Maybe her parents caught her smoking out there. But she never came back.
For weeks that summer, he played in the woods with his new friend Laura. And one day, in what seemed like a blink of an eye, she was gone. But little did he know at the time, the story of Laura was far from over. Growing up, he'd always been more of a loner. But that summer, having his new friend Laura around was a pleasant change. He even started to develop a crush. Laura was different, often vague about her personal life, and strange-looking, as he described. Mop-top hair, clothes that didn't fit. But nevertheless, he was thrilled to have someone to hang out with, someone who would listen to him, made him feel good. But one day, she was gone. No trace of Laura at all.
School year started, and so life went back to normal. The year after, the house was for sale. They were having an open house like they do. All of a sudden, Laura came back into my head. We talked for years about this house, and finally it was open to the public. So we pleaded with my mom to go to the open house. We knew we weren't going to buy the house, But finally, Mom gave in. I think even the adults wanted to see what was going on in that house. And we went to the open house. I thought I might see her, Plus, we just wanted to see what the house looked like. My mom was even excited, I remember. So we felt like we were going to something special, Like any open house, there's other people there. I remember some other people like us looking at the house, and then there was a man, which I assume was Laura's dad. And then there was Laura's mom, and I could tell right away it was Laura's mom. They looked a lot alike, only she had real short hair, but they looked alike, and you could just tell that they were related. She's showing us around the house, and my mom's striking up a small conversation, saying, we've lived here, been neighbors, it's a shame we've never met. Her mom said, yeah, although I feel like I recognize this guy here, and pointed at me. I don't know if she was watching me and her daughter out there playing or what. Kind of creeped me out a little bit. Walking around doing the tour of the house, and we get through the second floor, and that's it. That's the end of the tour. And I know there's a third floor because she's told me there's a giant attic up there, and I've seen the window. She didn't mention it. She just said, that's the house. I was 10, and I was kind of shy. I wanted to say, I know there's a third floor, but I didn't. My mom was talking to her, and eventually she said that they lost their daughter years ago. She said her daughter had passed away. And at that point, I'm freaked out. She said years ago. It hadn't been years since I hung out with the girl. Me and my sister, I'll never forget, we looked at each other and thinking, who have I been out there hanging with? I must have looked funny because the mom said to me, what's wrong, buddy? Looks like you've seen a ghost. I just wanted to get the hell out of there. I played out there on multiple occasions. She never came into my house or anything, so no one saw her but me. She was not in school. There's no yearbook pictures to look up. We were walking to the car, and my mom said, no more. No more going out there. I don't know what's going on here, but you're not going out there by yourself anymore. I don't know if she believed in ghosts or what, but she, you're not going back out there without someone's supervision. It wasn't real scary until we got back to the house, and I was thinking about the ramifications of what, oh my God, is it a ghost? Am I playing with a ghost? And I didn't think she was dead. It's still creepy thinking about it. It's been 31 years. Already with my interactions with Laura, I already had a bad vibe about her parents because she would never talk about it. I didn't trust the lady. I thought Laura was in that house. I honestly thought Laura was locked in the attic. maybe something bad's going on up there. I physically had pushed this person on a swing. I don't know, I just feel like I wouldn't be able to touch a ghost. And I smoked a cigarette. I didn't take the cigarettes out there myself. I was 10 years old. I didn't have a way of getting cigarettes. After the open house, I disobeyed my parents one time and did go back out there. I kind of thought maybe Laura was locked up there. I thought she was being held hostage or something in the house. Being a kid, very curious. Thought maybe I could save Laura, I think. And I thought maybe if she was in the window, maybe she'd try to signal me. And I went out to the exact spot. And I went to where I could see the window. And I looked up at the window. And sure enough, I was being watched. But it wasn't Laura. It was her mom, staring at me, like she was waiting for me. And it scared the piss out of me. She was staring right at me out the window. There was no smile, just staring at me. I turned around and got the hell out of there. My sister coined the name Laura of the Woods as the ghost out there, and it sounded like a pretty cool name. So eventually it kind of became a cool story. I was telling my buddies that I had a little ghost friend out there, and Laura of the Woods, out there roaming the wild woods at night or whatever. And it kind of became a myth of its own. But I didn't think it was a ghost, really. I just kind of went with the ghost story eventually in my head. Finally, I started believing it over and over. Eventually, a couple years later, my parents got divorced. And in that process, we sold the house. So I moved. And I never went back there for a long time. Eventually, Mr. Robinson passed away, and my Uncle Bill bought his property. So now I had a chance to go back, not to my house, but to the wooded area that I knew. And one day when we were at a cookout, I took my wife, which I'd told her a little bit about the story, but not too much. And my sister brought up, remember Laura of the Woods? We were all sitting around drinking beers, and I started telling the story again. I never told it fully to my wife. And then I realized after I was telling, I never told my family about the cigarette part and all that good stuff. So that came out. After a few beers, my wife and sister were like, okay, let's go see it. The spot that I hung out in with the swing and the tree. Mr. Robinson's trails were grown up, but they were still there. It was just like being a kid again. I was tracing my old footsteps. We're going along the trail, and finally we get to the part where I used to sit with my G.I. Joes, and we found it. The swing was amazingly still hanging there, although I wouldn't sat on it. It looked like it could have snapped at any moment. And the tree was there, and the name was still on the tree. And without really thinking, I walked up to it and put my hand in the tree and pulled out the old pack of cigarettes that was still there. We were all freaked out at this point. I thought I was maybe playing with a ghost, but now it's physical. I'm feeling this. So we're like, okay, it confirmed what I was telling them. What the hell was my childhood? What was I doing out there? It's true. Let's get the hell out of here. For the next week or so, it was on my mind big time. And one night, I had some kind of food poisoning or something. I was real sick and in bed, having like fever dreams and sweating, and I had this dream. I'm walking out on the trails, Mr. Robinson's trails again. It's dusk. It's gray outside. It's fall. The trees have no leaves, but the leaves are on the ground. I'm on Mr. Robinson's trail. I know the trail well. It's the one with the bench overlooking the creek. I'm just following the trail, and I don't want to, but I just keep walking. Turn the corner, and there's one of the benches. Sitting on the bench was Laura. Mop top hair from the back. She was facing the other way. I was coming up from behind, but I could tell from the hair, everything, that it was her. And they get closer, and she's like laughing, this weird little giggle. She's laughing, and I feel like she's laughing at me. feel really stupid. She lifts her head up, and when she does, her hand is on her hair, and it just comes off. And what I saw then really freaked me out. My wife said I sat straight up in the bed, panting and sweating and screaming. It was always her. It was always the mom. It was the mom the whole time.
Decades later, he had a horrifying revelation. The mom. It was always the mom. It explained everything. Her weird mop-top hair, the strange clothes she wore that didn't fit, smoking cigarettes. He always knew it wasn't a ghost. He just couldn't explain it until all these years later.
It's one thing to think you were playing with ghosts as a kid. It's even creepier to think that you're playing with an adult woman dressed as a kid, pretending to be a kid, just playing games on a little boy. That's the conclusion I've come with, and that's what I, in my heart, know what happened to me. And I believe it wholeheartedly. The dream was so vivid and so lucid and so real. And people ask me, how could a 10-year-old be so stupid to think a grown woman's an 11-year-old kid? I don't know, I guess I was gullible. But I thought it was an 11-year-old girl. I felt kind of stupid, to be honest with you. This was a friend I thought I had. I think I knew. Maybe when I went to the open house and saw how similar they looked. And I just wouldn't admit it to myself. Suppressed memory or whatever you want to call it. I had a feeling. I know in my heart that's exactly what happened. I think I knew long before the dream, actually. I don't think I wanted to admit such a weird thing happened to me. I have a 10-year-old son right now, and I could see him being fooled too. The idea of a grown woman out in the woods waiting on anyone to come and then be friend for like 2 weeks or so and teach me to smoke cigarettes, make me push her on a swing. Just weird. She even talked like a kid. Her voice was not the same as the voice at the open house. She had a kid voice. Here's my theory. I believe her daughter did die, and I believe she was acting like her daughter. Maybe as a coping mechanism, I don't know. I just can't imagine a woman with no kids thinking that was a fun idea. Unless she was just total batshit crazy. I feel like she did lose something, and she was trying to let it live through this weird game.